What's up, guys? My name is Ricardo, Neiva, otherwise known as Cine, and today let's talk about some sensor sizes. Hit the intro. Cool, so in the last let's talk about some focal lengths, links in the description, go check it out. We talked about how sensor size can play an important role in focal lengths. Now we're going to be breaking down sensor sizes and how they work and what influences them and how they in turn affect focal lengths. So yeah, let's go. Cool, there's so many types of sensor sizes out there. There's 1/3, there's super 8mm, there's 1.23, there's 2/3, there's 1 inch, there's super 16mm, there's micro 4/3, there's APS-CH, there's full frame, now there's IMAX sensors. The sensor list goes on for days and they each have their own little quirks for it. Now we're going to break down what sensor sizes influences on the basis of a full frame sensor. Now a full frame sensor is that considered similar to 35mm film stock. Now, camera sensor is the piece of hardware that captures light that's traveled through the lens into the camera body and converts it to a signal that outputs the image that we see. And the sensor size basically affects how much light is used in this whole process. Now, a large sensor size basically allows for more information to be captured as it is a larger canvas, whilst a smaller sensor has less information that's captured and has a crop factor in the image being captured. Basically, think of it as a painter who has got an A3 canvas versus an A4 canvas. The painter with the A3 canvas can add a lot more detail because he's got a larger platform to paint on, whilst the one who's got the little A4 canvas has got to compress things and maybe lose a little bit of detail to make the image realistic. Cool, now when you talk about sensor size, we talk about the full frame sensor being the baseline sensor size, and that is because it is emulating 35mm film stock, which was the Academy recognized size, and because the digital sensor is basically trying to copy the analog film stock on a digital platform, that is why it is considered the baseline size. Cool, now sensor size affects 5 main things, and that is depth of field, resolution, low light sensitivity, size of camera and lenses, and the angle of view. Now, depth of field is basically how your image is perceived, what is in focus and what is blurred out. And for those people who really like shallow depth of field, a larger sensor is more appealing because it requires less distance to get that blurring effect. Meanwhile, the smaller you go, the more distance you have to be away from your subject in order to get that blurring effect. Then we have resolution. Now, resolution ties in with the correlation between megapixels and sensor size. Now, whilst having a lot of megapixels is great and does help with the quality, it's largely based on the size of the sensor, because the smaller the sensor size, the smaller those megapixels have to be, which means less light is being used to convert an image. Whilst if you have a larger sized sensor, the megapixels can be larger and therefore more light is able to hit those photo sites in the sensor and create an even more clearer image and outputting greater quality. Which affects the third thing, which is low light sensitivity. The larger your sensor, the more light is able to hit that part of the sensor, which means at nighttime where there's very little light, those large sensors can absorb the very little light that is available and create a much cleaner image with less grain. Whilst there'll still be grain because our sensors aren't godlike yet, but it does help in cutting down the grain. Then we have the size of the camera and lenses. The larger the sensor, the larger the camera body has to be in order to house that large sensor. But it also affects the lenses used, and that's because the lenses have to be larger in order to encompass that sensor completely. Otherwise, the lens is not going to be covering the sensor completely, and therefore the full lens is not being used in the outputting of the image. Cool, now the final aspect that's affected by sensor size is angle of view. Now in a previous video called Let's Talk About It Focal Lengths, links are in the description, go check it out. And just go check out every single video in the Cine channel, because biased opinion, I think they're pretty damn great. Angle of view is basically how much of the scene is being captured. Now this is largely influenced by sensor size, because as much as the lens helps us get the angle of view, the sensor size is the canvas. So therefore, the smaller the sensor size, we start adding a thing called crop factor. And that basically goes, oh, a full frame is this size, we've shrunk it down by this much. We then take that value and times it to the focal length, and we will then get a accurate representation of our angle of view in regards to focal length. So basically, if you take an 18mm, times it by 1.6 crop factor, we will then have a 28mm angular view being recorded in the sensor. So yeah, that is sensor size. I hope you guys understood what sensor size is, how it works, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Because if you did, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that funky, funny stuff that we ask you to do here on YouTube. And I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.